Should we go for it?
Yeah, we are going for it. Yeah.
Welcome, check 1 2, check 1 2. Welcome to the Be Well Now podcast. I happen to be a patient of Dr. Ron Dummar. Pitched him on a podcast. I have a broadcast background, and I'm an extremely curious patient. My name is Nick, joined by Dr. Dummar.
Hello, everyone.
We're here now, which is a big theme in my life lately, is trying to be present. And you're the healer in Heber City, Utah, where you focus a lot on helping people get well.
Absolutely. And it's a matter of our life experience contributing to an overall outcome that we're desiring, right? And we focus a lot on outcomes in life. People focus on outcomes a lot. And they measure frequently their success by a certain outcome. And if the outcomes that they have are not lining up the way that they want them to, then they find themselves a failure. And what I'm hoping that people can get out of some of the things that we discuss on this podcast is that it's not about the outcomes. It's about the inflows and what the inner state is like. Because everything inside is going to project externally. And it's going to create, regardless of what you see happening in your external environment, regardless of a stressor that pops its way in, right? It's going to be projected the way that what you create of that stressor or that moment is going to be a result of who you are internally and what you've tapped into internally. So what I'm hoping people get out of it is that it's less about all of the other things that seem to control you and your decisions externally, and it's more about you having that environment internally where you feel that peace and that calm that you can project into everything that you do.
America seems to be the land of individualism, and I've heard a lot of spiritual teachers talk about the best thing that you can do is to work on yourself so you can create a place of peace for people who come into your life so you can be a better person to others. My thinking mind says that is so American to say, just sit in your corner and meditate, close your eyes, become totally self-indulgent, and discard the rest of the world because you can't handle their stress, but you're going to work on you. How do you reconcile working on you with actually being a human in the real world and having that apply? And do you think working on you is the first step?
So to answer your second question first, working on you is the first step. It's usually our last step. I say to a lot of my patients that they would prefer to put the highest quality gasoline and the highest quality oil into their car engine and then to buy the lowest quality food for themselves. And I wonder if we do that in life sometimes.
Well, you got to have the $1,500 cell phone, but you're broke, so let's go through the McDonald's drive-thru, right?
Yeah, we all do it, right? And we know
you don't eat McDonald's.
Yeah, we know we do it. You want me to hear a funny story? So a funny story is when we first started our practice, I was really encouraging people, to make wise, healthy choices, and it was about, for me at that time, really what their decisions, them understanding how to live and what decisions and choices to make, rather than listing down on a piece of paper, only eat these foods, only eat these things. I was trying to teach them principles rather than giving them laws or commandments, right? Anyway, one day, I was really fairly new into practice, still trying to get a lot of people coming in and to buy into the concept of what I was doing here in the Valley. And my wife texts me and she says, we're having lunch, meet us over here. Okay, where are you? I'm at McDonald's.
Oh, gosh.
I'm like, honey, I can't. And my truck, the vehicle, it was an old 1993, it had a utility kit on it, so recognizable in a small town, right? Everybody would know if I pulled up to the McDonald's parking lot. And she goes, it's okay, we got Subway, but it's right next to McDonald's. But the kids wanted to play at the playhouse, so they were over there at McDonald's playing. And there's a whole other psyche, right, that goes into the fact that kids want to be at McDonald's for a certain reason. But the funny thing about that story, right, is that Well, here I was at McDonald's eating Subway with my family. New into practice. That was an uncomfortable situation for me. But there was something internally for me that I had to work out as well.
Right. It seems like that's your work to do, that shame, that embarrassment, because
Yep.
after all, you're a human, but you're somebody new starting out of practice. You're trying to set an example, but you're not Jesus. And that's the reality is, I heard Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher from decades ago, but he says when you're looking at a teacher, a spiritual teacher, a role model, a mentor, they're not going to be perfect. So take everything you can from their teachings, but let their actions, and he talks about it in a spiritual, let that be their own karma.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to be perfect, and that might let you down, and that might be the baby in the bathwater, and all of a sudden everything they taught you is a lie because look at this weakness in their life. And I think if we could all just realize that these humans are flawed, but their messages can still have the integrity at the same time and not be degraded. But there's also some scumbags out there that I get the human reaction that makes you want to say, oh, this person did this, he's a sinner, he's flawed, I'm not going to listen to him anymore. But at the same time, you're a human being.
Yeah, and if we're looking for something, if we're looking for a reason not to be healthy, if we're looking for a reason not to follow someone's words or not to follow someone's advice, we can find it. You'll find it in everyone, everywhere. You will find what you look for, right? And I think that's a really important point for people to recognize. If you want to find a flaw, if you want to find a justification or a reason for you not to do something that would be beneficial for your life moving forward, by all means, you have it. It's lined right up there for you. But if you want to throw all those things away, cast them off, shuck them off of your body, right, and say, hey, I don't need these things. They're not serving me anymore. And move forward in a way that's going to be beneficial overall for your health, projecting forward, then you have it. Then make it. Then be it.
Okay, so how do I start? That's my question. Someone out there is listening. They know they're meant for something more. They want their life to be better. Where do I start?
So you have to start by conceptualizing good. That's it.
What does that mean?
Conceptualizing good. Exactly. What does that mean? Well,
I don't even know what good is anymore, man.
Yes.
I got a cell phone that pings every second. I don't even feel my feelings. I'm just busy being busy. And I don't even know who I am anymore. That's somebody out there, because that was me. And that's probably me at least half the time now.
Well, and it's
probably 80%. Totally reactive, totally wired to just react all the time and get out of my body, be totally unconscious.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a story we've been trying to tell from the beginning. Your story, what you're sharing too, is each of our stories is unique, but it's not the only likeness of its kind. Does that make sense? There's lots of us doing the same thing. We're all following these same patterns. Each of us is unique, and so we're going to follow them in ways that are unique to us and ways that allow us to be the rebellious, expressive one, because that's what we tend to want to do, right? We want to do it our way, and we feel that our way is valuable. And the fact of the matter is, your way is valuable.
Because we're all special.
Yeah,
come on now.
We're all
we know
individual.
better than tradition, institutions.
Yeah, right.
I don't need to get married first before I have a kid. That's a whole nother story. I love my kids, but that was me. I was like, what is this marriage institution?
Yeah.
If I could do it over again, which I don't want to do because it's all perfect. I'm so grateful for my experiences, but I would recommend to somebody, get married first. Have that intention before you bring the baby into the world, just because there's something about having things ready with a solid intention, not having someone show up at your door uninvited while your house is messy, but instead plan a nice dinner, have them come to the door, your table's made, your house is clean, you welcome them in. That's one thing a therapist, that's the image she gave me once, and I didn't even believe it because our kid was on the way. But looking back, we're not as special or unique as we think. There's some value in institutions and the way they've been distilled over millennia, but also in traditions. But also there's plenty to criticize there. I digress.
Well, I mean, really what you're talking about is putting things in order, right? Discovering order. And that's what I'm talking about too. Good.
Sounds boring.
Yeah, it is, right? Good. What is good? But when you actually get to it, it's incredibly exciting. And you realize that there are so many additional avenues that you can go down. There's still a whole host of options that you have in front of you to create what you want in life and to express your individuality. I think that this rebellious nature or the individuality nature that we have inside of us is a rooted instinctual thing that all of us have in order to perpetuate and better the human race. So if we were all just fine with the current set of order, how would we ever go beyond those confines? So it's the creativity of the individual and the expressiveness of believing that I can do something another way that actually allows us to progress in a way of goodness still. The difficult thing is that usually the current construct has contention with the new construct, right? That's the real issue. It has nothing to do with, I want to express my love and I want to express my feeling this way versus your way. That's not a problem. There's no issue with that. There's really not. There are certain things throughout history, like you've pointed to, that have proven over and over and over again, if you do certain basic things, it's going to turn out better.
Like what?
Well, you've pointed to marriage, right? So generally, having a contract or entering into an agreement together, being married, having that level of commitment up front, generally things might turn out, and we don't know that when you look at the divorce rates, right? But at the same time, when you buy into the historical idea of the construct of commitment, right? So does the construct of commitment have to fall along the lines of a marriage ceremony? There would be a lot of us that would say, yeah, I think that's ideal. In your life, I'm curious as to know why you think that your experience would have been better through marriage rather than having had a baby first.
I think the intentionality around it would have forced me to ask questions about, is this partner the one for me? Bringing a ceremony where you invite dozens of people, spending the money, looking myself in the mirror, taking the time to make sure this is exactly what I wanted. Now, she was getting a little bit older. I was madly in love. I knew this was a good person who was going to be a good mother to my kids. And so I thought, you know what? I've trusted my feeling. I'm a field player. I get streaky on the basketball court. When I'm in my zone, I trust that. Whatever I was telling myself, these stories are funny that we tell ourselves. And again, I look at it as all perfect. I don't regret it. I see the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the strange way you can fold into the mystery of the universe that you can't necessarily explain to someone intellectually, but once you get it, you get it. Because now divorced, a very painful experience, but 2 beautiful children. Mm-hmm. And so I look at how tough that divorce was, but how beautiful that she gave me these children. And then I realize what's good brings suffering because it's in time. It is impermanent. So the good things in your life that make you happy also lead to suffering because they don't last. We're all going to die one day. And so what was good then, the pain of losing it, that brought suffering. That's an example in my life of what good and bad can look like in one. And then the suffering leads to waking up, an awareness, a compassion, and a sense of, okay, I learned some stuff now. I can be a better human. And that was through the suffering. And it's hard to see in the moment. Am I on the same page here? Because I feel like I just ramble. But
no, you did. Yeah,
but I look back a lot in that past because it was pretty painful. And now, going forward, I'm better informed. My heart's in a better place of, okay, what do I want going forward?
Yeah. Well, you're essentially, this is good. What we're saying is, here's a level of goodness. It was good for you to follow your heart the way that you did.
Although I lost trust in my intuition after this. I'm getting it back.
Yeah, well, but that's through struggle. That's because of doubt. You didn't lose intuition because of necessarily specific commitment that you made to somebody or because you didn't enter into a marriage agreement before. That's not why you lost it. You lost it because you doubted You doubted the decisions you made because you met with suffering. And people do that regardless of what commitments they make.
Like what?
At the highest order, right? They may get married by the Pope or married by the highest order of the land. And then they have a child that has a disability, right? And that can be a complete twist for them. Wow, is this now I'm resigned to this commitment for the rest of that child's life.
That's heavy, just thinking about it.
It's tough, right? And everybody listening would say, of course, in their heart, they would say, of course we're going to take care of that child. But if that's your child and you're in that experience and that is called upon you because of a contractual agreement that you made, would you for a moment consider, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life?
100%.
Yeah.
Often.
Yes.
You don't say it out loud to people, but you think
you're
it a
going to think
lot.
through it.
Yeah.
And but those are that's the reality of what we deal with. Struggle is going to come.
Inevitably.
And it's a matter of how we, as individuals, choose to view that struggle and how we choose to move through that struggle. Because when we get into a situation where we believe that the struggle requires the breaking or dissolving of a contractual agreement, really what that means is that struggle, we believe that struggle is a result of that contractual agreement. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We really need to think long and hard about that. Is this really a result of this contractual agreement? Or maybe is this a result of me not living to my obligations to this contractual agreement? See, living to the obligations of an agreement that you contracted to is very different than the fact that you could say, oh, that contract's the problem. No, you not living to the contract is the problem, right? And so that is something that we all have to look into our hearts and observe contractually, what are my obligations in life?
Yeah, outside of marriage. I mean, we did get
Yeah.
married eventually, but I feel like we backed into that parking spot instead of fully going nose in. I mean, it's a long story, but give me another example for folks who aren't married. Again, I come in to get my back cracked, which is a term that is not respectful to all that you do in your practice. I say that kind of jokingly because I come in to get an adjustment, and then we talk about this, and then someone knocks on the door and says, Dr. Dummar, you got to leave. But we're in this philosophical conversation. So this is just what I tend to end up doing with you. What's another contractual agreement as an example?
So we enter into contractual agreements every day in our life. Some of them are written, some of them are verbal, some of them are more just instinctual. Okay, so Mom, how come no one's here to pick me up? That's a contractual agreement, right? And moms feel very responsible for that. A baby crying at night, that's a contractual agreement. And moms and dads feel very responsible for that, should feel responsible for that. A child who is at a left to babysit while parents are gone, that's a contractual agreement. So the other thing is now a phrase that I'll share with you that I think that we all need to be more introspective about. And this has to do with contractual agreements, contractual obligations that we meet. And it interweaves itself with this idea of goodness, because what we're really trying to establish, the only thing a contract does is it says, okay, I'm going to hold with a stronger force to keeping this alignment intact. That's it. That's all the paper does. Beyond that, it's all up to us. Every little bit is up to us. And so when we when we can breach everything possible that we can, or we attempt to breach everything possible without breaching the specific verbiage on the document, are we really cheating the document, or are we honoring the document? And the reality is, we're cheating the document.
We know that in our hearts.
Yeah, you know it. You know it. The phrase is this, and this is the phrase I said I was going to share with you. It's only business.
Not personal.
Yeah. It's just business, man. It's just business, not personal. When was anything ever just business? It's just the contract. It's just the contract. It's not you. I'm sorry, it's not. Anyone who's ever had to fire somebody, lay somebody off, they understand the heaviness of a contractual agreement. And the weight, the reliance that whole families have on that contractual agreement. The entire livelihood of a family is dependent on this contractual agreement. And we have to end it for whatever reason. That's a heavy weight. That's a heavy burden to bear for someone that's going to go up to an employee, male or female, and say, "Hey, we need to terminate this."
There's so many things that I have in my mind. One was, you mentioned after the marriage, was it connected to a contractual agreement? The other thing is, I've never even heard about it in this way, where every day we're engaging in so many contractual agreements. And then the other thought I have is, these stories we tell ourselves, they're very much aligned with I think a tendency to tell a lot of white lies. So I want to ask you about white lies. I want to ask you more about the contract, and then also about how you originally brought the contract up in relation to, I guess you could say, a failed marriage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where do we start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Multiple good questions there, right? So let's unwind again what we want to cover. So we want to go back through the whole idea of how we even came to this contractual agreement idea.
We can start there.
I don't know how we got there. So it was around the marriage, though, right? It was a contract. But to me, everything, just like I explained recently, everything in life is a contractual agreement. Everything. Anything you do is a contract. And if you think a bit about it on even a chemistry, a physiology scale, right? Your body has a contract to perform for you in a certain way. If it doesn't, there's a problem, and you notice it fast. But there's a contractual agreement that your body's meeting. Now, typically, I'll say this. If your body is not performing for you in the way it's contracted to perform for you, it's more often than not a result of something you've done to it, right? So if you have constipation, if you have high cholesterol, if you have heart disease, cardiovascular disease, if your endothelial lining is all inflamed, if your gut, your GI is completely all over the place, or you have irritable bowel or colitis, it's a result of something that you have put into the body or that the physiology has come in contact with. Okay? Now, some of those things are not directly you doing it. Like, you could be exposed to viruses, you could be exposed to other pathogenic factors, and those cause inflammatory dysfunctions within the body, right? But there's a contractual obligation that your body has to react in a specific way to try to protect you and keep you moving forward throughout this life. Okay? Every little thing that we do is a contract. When I say that I'm going to do something, that's a contract. Or I'll text somebody and I say I'm going to be somewhere, that's a contract. And it's my obligation to notify if I have to be deficient on that contract as soon as possible, right? And if I don't, well, that's a problem too. And it really is a check mark of some sort as to my understanding of my obligation and the seriousness of my words. I think is it in Joshua or in Deuteronomy maybe, but it says, we are to live by every word that proceeds forth out of the mouth of God. And, I take that to another level because I think that our objective here is for us to learn godliness. And God himself is a creator. And everything that has happened or occurred on this earth, as far as the creation, happened because of his voicing it. So the word was spoken, and then creation took place.
Not everybody's going to agree with your belief system. It
True.
may not matter at all. I just think of the person out there who is vibing with this podcast but doesn't consider themselves religious. They hear God and they're tuning out.
Yeah.
But the more that I've been on my own spiritual journey, I could be so wrong about this, but I'm honoring my own intuition that there are all these different faiths out there. But if you believe in God, there's only got to be one. So we're all from the same God. So different faith traditions look completely different. Mm-hmm. But once you sort of summit this mountain, there we all are. And so whether it's a spiritual belief that we are all one, I think that God can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. It doesn't mean I'm asking you to change anything you just said, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. And I do not speak about scriptural texts or books in any specific way to suggest that people should be inherently aligning themselves with that. However, I do think that when you have an ancient text that's been around for a very long time, that has been guiding and directing nations of the earth, that it owes some credence. It's owed some level of justification, or there's some justification to modeling or learning life lessons. And it's the same thing we talked about before with you have a guru or you have a teacher and a mentor, and then they make a misstep. Well, are you going to throw everything you ever learned from that mentor off? First of all, it's entirely impossible for you to do that because they've blessed your life. They've touched your life and they've changed your life. So you can't really do that. You may try to do it, but it'll be a very feeble attempt for you to do it. But no, the reality is, I understand that there is a lot of angst toward religious, kind of religious ideologies. But what I would encourage people to do is to take everything you can from every guru, from every teacher, from every master, from every sacred text, from everyone who suggests, okay, they have received over time, and it's been proven, and numerous people have demonstrated that following this leads to some level of goodness, right?
We're back to the goodness.
Yeah, this is where we are. And that's the point again, right? Is that these gurus are leading us, they're showing us a way of good. And we need to be able to, first of all, conceptualize good. And so we have to have what resonates with me when I read this text? What resonates with me when I listen to Sadhguru? What resonates with me when I listen to Jordan Peterson? What resonates with me when I listen to, give me another name,
Ram Dass.
Ram Dass.
He's my guy lately. Talk to me in a month, and I'll probably be on someone else. Sadhguru seems a little too successful. He's got
Yeah.
millions of followers. He's on all the podcasts and the shows. He's interesting to me. There's a bravado and almost a cockiness about him. It doesn't work for me. That's what resonates
Yes.
with me.
Yes.
Different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely. And so we should learn something from every interaction that we have in the day. And every interaction is meant to bless your life. How many times have you thought, you know what? And maybe you haven't thought. You just said to somebody, oh my gosh, I love that dress. Or you've just decided to spend time with someone. Right? That completely changes the course of life, right? It changes the course of someone's life. It can change their thoughts. It can adapt their it can adapt their actions even, right? They can completely change as a result of a little thing that you did. And we can look back at that. That could be written into a story. You know, so-and-so, I was sitting on a park bench feeling horrible about myself, and so-and-so was jogging by and, oh, hey, how you doing? And then sat down and spent 3 minutes with me just talking about my day.
And didn't try to convert you to a religion.
Yeah, wasn't trying
I'm sorry to say that, but there's no agenda. It's unconditional. It's
yes.
I'm just here for you now, despite everything you are, everything you do. I'm just here.
Yeah, it's goodness, right? I'm here for goodness. And you sit down, minimal, and then up, and then the story is written how, oh, that person decided not to commit suicide. Right?
Do you have any stories like that without revealing any patient confidentiality where something you did and it's something that maybe we could all apply to our lives impacted somebody?
Absolutely. I had a patient who, and this is an interesting story. I had a patient who was very concerned about a relationship that she was in. And also one that she was considering leaving, essentially, was what was going on. So she did. I worked with her for a number of months, and she did end up leaving. And she had this gift that had been given to her, and she continued to have this pain in her wrist, and she would have anxiety and stress, and we were treating her for a lot of those kind of trauma. She was almost experiencing a post-traumatic stress of just this event, right? This time that she had to leave, right? And so I was working with her one day, and I asked her, whose bracelet is this that you're wearing? Because every time I would look at it or move across it or near it, I almost had like a thought of an older person. And it didn't seem like a love bracelet or a memento of a past relationship. She said that it was given to her by her former partner's mother. And I said, well, that's because she had a good relationship with her. And she's like, I still have a good relationship with her. And I said, that's really nice, but I think it's a lingering memory for you that's affecting your physiology, believe it or not.
Happened to be on the wrist that was giving her pain as well.
Yes, and
okay.
It was on the wrist, and it was in the location. We were treating that, and we would stick needles in there to treat the pain, and it would make it worse when we would put the needles in there. It would get worse. So I said, okay, what I want you to do is this. With all the love that you have and directing all the goodness that you can towards prosperity and light and love and truth moving forward, find somebody in your day that you can give this to. And then tell them that you thought that this would be a really good gift for them, and make it a good moment and exchange it with love, light, and truth. And this pain will go away. So no more anxiety attacks, no more pain in the wrist, physiology completely resolved, and the patient was able to move forward. She was able to move forward with more confidence, more light, more love and truth. And she did, right? She gave that away to somebody and was blown away that something like that would have made the difference, right?
So it's not just taking off the bracelet, tossing it out. It's giving it with that intention of goodness to somebody else. But isn't there some bad juju there, some bad energy, because it was the mother of the person that she's in a bad relationship with? I mean, it seems very complex to me. Why did you instruct her to give it with that intentionality to someone else?
So she had to change the intention around the entire experience. Her with that was a remnant of the past, right? And so every time she looked at it, it's a reminder, oh, this is my ex's mother, right? So it's not the ex's mother of somebody else. As far as they were concerned, this is somebody who was very intentional and loving and kind and gave that to her as a gift. And so we can create and change the energy of things, right? You can create, just because an attachment is there for one person doesn't mean it's going to be there for everyone. But it certainly will be there if you don't relieve that attachment. So what she did is she changed it to light and love. She changed it to an object of goodness, an object of value.
Which it was originally from the mother of her ex.
It was originally, yes.
Who she had a good relationship with. So that transference was good. Mm-hmm. But then if you triangulate it, it brought up the past with her ex. And so I guess there was love there to begin with, and it was transferring that to somebody else the right way.
Yes, exactly. Restoring the light and love. It was really just freeing her of the negative patterns that she was creating by keeping it. And it was really up to her, because it was continually a mental reminder of a difficult relationship that she had had. Why did she need to carry that forward? Why would she need to carry that forward? Well, if she carried it forward, the more she would carry it forward, the more it would make her suffer.
Okay, Dr. D, I've got my old wedding ring sitting around somewhere. What the hell do I do? What do I do with it? What do I do with it?
Well, do you need money?
I don't think it was ever worth that much. It goes back to the intentionality of, am I doing this right with the intention that this is really going to be my person, and I want to spend all this time, energy, and love to set that intentionality, set the table for the rest of my life. Should I pawn that thing or what?
I love it. Well, you could. You can do, this was just what I asked her to do. It could have been, wrap this in mud and soak it in so-and-so and do 3 circle somersaults and then wash it off with a specific type of water, and then all the juju is going to be gone.
Holy water.
Right? It could have been something like that. And I'm not trying to diminish what we actually did there, but I don't, again, we're talking about the extrinsic, external versus the internal, right? The extrinsic is only there to educate the internal, to recreate better goodness in the extrinsic environment. So the external teaches us that there's something wrong internally, so that we can reset the course to reproject something more beneficial externally for us.
So is there another example besides something as tangible as a bracelet for folks to take away? Stuck patterns, something else in their life that they could actively do this process with and it would help them?
So, okay, yes. One thing that people will notice frequently in their life is anxiety. Like when you have the rat race. You're living the rat race. You lived the rat race for a while.
I didn't even think I had anxiety. I thought that was for losers. And I'm saying this, trying not to label that and not judge the fact that I just said this word, because I don't want to be saying those kind of words about people. No. I feel like when you're angry, you become angry. I don't want to be the guy who says losers, but this is my old mentality: is people who have anxiety, like they just worry too much.
Yeah,
I was numbed so many layers. I was numbed at so many layers that I didn't even realize I had anxiety. And as I started to work on myself, it became very apparent that I have anxiety, and it's very uncomfortable. So I'm just saying that, like, we all have it in this like, anxiety is a part of life to some extent for everybody.
Yeah. There are people who experience anxiety and don't know it. Well, what will frequently start to happen if you experience anxiety and don't know it? Well, you might develop stomach aches occasionally. You might have acid regurg occasionally. You might have fatigue that starts creeping in. You might develop some numbness, neurological related issues, twitching, or even tics, right? All of these things can be really a result of anxiety, okay? And so if you are experiencing any of those things and you think, no, I don't have anxiety, you may have anxiety. And it's okay to have anxiety. And this is the other thing to recognize. Again, what I said is the external environment. There's something about our environment that tells us, gives us a cue, so that we can reorient what's happening internally and project something new. If we don't ever get feedback, we'll never change. Why would we? Right?
I learned that the hard way.
Seriously. But we all learn it kind of the hard way, right? We all learn it because we have something that happens that we don't like. If everything we ever did we liked, we're brilliant. We're the greatest people ever. You know, I was watching this Gordon Ramsay thing the other day, and he goes and this real estate tycoon purchases this 7-acre plus area, and he has a restaurant, and he's trying to make it a really high, ritzy, high-scale restaurant, and he has like a 2,000-pound buy-in, and then they can come. Well. They all come, and it was a great opening, but then it falls flat on its face. And so Gordon Ramsay's in there saying, hey, and the guy's been doing it for 3 years, and he can only last he only has enough funding for it before he has to pull out completely for like 8 more months. So Gordon says to him, your food sucks. It's horrible. Like it's this, it's that. You know, he's completely berating his food. Well, that's Gordon Ramsay. But the tycoon, the real estate tycoon, you know, it was chipping away at his pride. And you could see it. That's a
serious thing.
Yeah.
Giving people feedback without them even asking for it. I'm either horrible at it, or the nature of people is to react, not respond.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Because it leads to just horrible outcomes. I mean, and maybe the horrible outcome is something for me to learn and work on myself, so it's not horrible and everything is unfolding in the way that it should be. But, man, trying to get people feedback, I always end up regretting it. Because they don't want to hear it, or it comes out wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm not Gordon Ramsay, right?
We need to be better at receiving feedback, right? At one point, Gordon goes, holy cow, man, like, why don't you just... Obviously, he didn't say, holy cow, he's Gordon Ramsay. But he said, why don't you just take it on the chin and let's get to work and make it better? Right? But it was hard. It was hard for him because, you know, he wanted to defend his business. He wanted to defend everything that he'd been doing. He wanted to defend his cooks. He wanted to defend his chefs. And, you know, and I think in large part, he wanted to defend himself. He didn't want people to think that the big real estate tycoon who'd made all these wonderful, grand, great investments that had gotten him to this great big place where he was, now had made an investment that was like the worst one ever, couldn't run a restaurant, which seemed like the easiest task to do. But the reality is not. It's not easy, right? And the fact that somebody was there saying, hey, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, this is not happening well. All of a sudden, you could see him just, you know, smoking multiple cigarettes, but trying to get through the stress and finally going, okay, all right, let's change this.
What do you think it taps into in that person and
Pride.
the reaction? okay, but what is that pride? When we go down, I like to think of everyone as sort of this inner child that has unresolved problems and trauma. So he has pride. Gordon Ramsay says, you are a failure. That taps into something about him that doesn't want to be a failure or failed when he was younger. What is the root that's happening there that maybe people aren't really aware of? And I think this applies to everybody else.
It's vulnerability. It's perfection. It's idealism. It's this individual that we've propped ourselves. It's this ego that we've propped ourselves up to be that doesn't exist. Okay? So we set ourselves up as a Jesus figure.
Most people do.
Yeah.
We think that we have an exceptional life. We're special.
Well, and look at all this.
We're the hero of our own story.
I'm so wealthy. I'm so much better than all of this, and it's obviously because of my choices. Well, now my choices are being called into question. Yeah, you have a lot of wealth, and you're doing a good job managing it. Good for you. But now this investment no. You make horrible choices.
So where is that connected to?
Well, with him, I'm not sure. But for a lot of us, it is. Like you're saying, we have to do a lot of self-reflection about, have I felt this way before? So tap into your body, really see if you can get internally, and see if there's a moment in your life you've felt that way before. Have you felt angry that way before? Have you felt upset? Have you felt dissed? Have you felt like somebody was taking advantage of you before? Any of those emotions that it stirs up in you, when have you felt that way prior? And work yourself back as far back as you can go.
So he's being told that he makes bad choices, which maybe if you are told you make bad choices, it means that you are, because so often shame is attached to the behavior when you're a kid. So it's not that Johnny's a bad boy. Johnny did something bad, but his father says, don't be a bad boy. So when Johnny makes a bad decision when he's a kid, his dad says, you're a bad human. You're not worthy of my love because you did this. And so Johnny isn't taught that the decision is bad, but he's worthy of the love. And so maybe when Gordon Ramsay says you make bad decisions, it takes Johnny back to a place where he was told the bad decision means that essentially he's not worthy of his dad's love. Maybe I'm going a long ways here, but I think the more that we start to be attentive to things, we can work on some of the core issues.
Yeah. Well, and that is really at the core of it all is, are you worthy of being loved?
That's the game, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you worthy of being loved? But we flip that around with our theme is aiming at goodness. We need to aim our life at goodness. If I say, are you worthy of being loved? And we just demonstrate, well, if we can feel worthy of being loved, we can make changes in our life that need to be made in order for us to be more successful. Right? Gordon Ramsay got in there, helped them. Eventually, they went through this difficult time. They changed things, and boom, it's like, it's gold now, right? It's gold, literal gold. Not only is it gold, it's better than gold. It's better than anything they ever could have imagined now. It's better than he would have imagined it before.
Why?
Why?
I'm looking for the big metaphor here.
Because they focused on the goodness, and they let all of the negativity, all of the doubt, all of the suffering, they let that just fall aside, right? There are these things, we can look at it like dead wood or debris in a forest, right? That's kind of what you're talking about. That's what we're talking about, is these things we can carry throughout our life that we don't need to perpetuate forward, but we can, if we wish, to carry them. And it will be a heavy burden if we continue to perpetuate those things forward. And it will reflect in our life like starting a business that fails, okay? And that's how these things happen, right? So if we can get to the root of us internally and make a switch early then the things that we project can be more successful than we would have even imagined. Okay? And that is how it's meant to be. It's meant to be that we have a dream towards goodness. Now, we have to be wary because we've talked a lot about the ego. The ego will set us up for a dream of self-aggrandizement, like self-fulfillment, right? It's all about us. That's the ego will set you up for this. So if we're making visions or setting goals in the ego, it's going to be all about how we can display our greatness to the world. But if we're setting goals and making visions from who we are, it's going to be all about what we offer the world, what we give the world, how we bless the world, how we show love to the world.
And the irony there is it's going to manifest in the outer worldly success that you, in your ego, wanted.
Yes.
That society puts in all the movies, the hero story. If you're successful, if you achieve against all odds, the highly successful person is touted in every movie or hero story, and they don't talk about, well, what did you have to give up to get there? Family, relationships, issues that you didn't deal with in your past. Everything was fueled on adrenaline. You don't even know what your why is. You want to succeed. That will come if you follow that intuitive heart that you just talked about. And one last thing is, I know one day I was here to get my neck adjusted, and of course we started talking about the meaning of life and everything, and you talked about your belly button and where's that pointed.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just such a powerful visual. Is I tell my kid, when you're defending someone in sports, watch the belly button, right? Because the head can do what it's going to do. It can juke, but nothing goes anywhere without that core. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a sports expert. But you talked about that compass, the belly button, the stomach. Can we end here with aligning that compass toward goodness and how it lines up with even where you're pointing your body as a visual technique to make it resonate?
Absolutely. So down in the umbilicus area, even below the umbilicus area, we have a core center of energy. In Chinese medicine, we call it dantian. There are chakras all along our forefront from the head down all the way along the midline of the body. But in Chinese medicine, we refer to it as dantian, and it's a very, very strong power source, and it provides a lot of the yang energy for life, for sustainability, for reproduction. So it's a life force, you could say, in and of itself. The question is, where then? If I have this, I imagine it like Iron Man, right? He's got this core center that powers him. Right there, it's in his core, and if he loses it, that core, it becomes a problem. But dantian is our core. It's a major power center, and really, if you imagine that being like a light, like a rod of light that shoots out from that core power center, it's going to aim at everything you want to achieve in life. Now, it aims unilaterally, meaning it's very concentric, right? Like a rod. Okay, it just extends out and it points somewhere into the future where we can't even conceive right now, at this end point that we will arrive at if we continue on the course we're currently on. So physiologically, mentally, physically, spiritually, it applies to all of those. We need to be assessing for ourselves, where am I pointing? Where am I aiming? And the aim, as far as when we actually get to where we're headed, is kind of an eternal, forever progressing thing. how far out does your rod extend? How far out if we think of it like a bow and arrow, we can hit a target. But I think it's better to think of it, and maybe hitting a target is easier for us to conceptualize, because at least there's something I can cast my gaze on. But the real joy and the real excitement and the greater achievement comes from recognizing that you're going to blow right through that target. So this target that your ego had in mind, right, that you wanted to hit, we essentially are going to shatter that target, obliterate it, and you're going to achieve something far greater than it. But if your core is facing in a direction that is not harmonious or filled with love and light and truth, then it will be equally as great in suffering, right? It will blow through the target that you ever could have imagined about the amount of suffering that you could have experienced.
Sounds like so much fun.
Yeah. And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want that.
It feels good in the moment, maybe.
Yeah, so aim yourself at love, light, and truth, and goodness. And here's the real answer. Because you've done a good job about trying to pour this out of me and getting examples and where do we go and what's the next step. The real answer is, I too don't know what goodness. I too don't know the answer. Let's put it that way. I don't know the answer exactly. But I feel the goodness. I feel the love. And I know what love feels like. I know what it feels. I know the difference between placing myself, how it feels to place myself above somebody else versus being completely in union with somebody. I know the difference. I know how that feels. Right? I know the difference between being willing to lay my life down for my kid, right? Versus being somebody who's jealous of my kid. I know the difference there. And that's the goodness. The goodness is, we may not be asked to do certain things, but are we willing? Is that our core? If that moment came, what would be our choice? And without a moment's hesitation, if we can reflect and we can know this is the good. This is the good. Right? Then we're aiming at the very highest optimal good for ourselves. And if we can aim at love, in every decision that we make, somebody says to us, it's just business. If you're a person who says it's just business, I challenge you to aim at love.
What if you're on the other side of that and you're boiling with anger?
When they're being let go?
You're the guy getting let go. You're the guy feeling betrayed on the other end of the business.
Exactly the same thing. Make it easier. Make it easier. Can we make it an easier situation? Right? The question is, am I going anyway? Am I going anyway? When an employee, we have this whole 2 weeks thing. You bring up a question, so I'm going to go off on it. We have this whole 2 weeks. Well, okay, you got to work 2 weeks. What employer wants somebody who's given their 2 weeks and is angry and upset? Who wants them to work 2 weeks? No employer that I know, because they're gone already. That person's center is somewhere else. They're aiming a completely different place. So you say, okay, what good is this doing? And you have to judge that. Certain employers may be like, hey, There are certain tasks that have to be done. Until we can get somebody else, you have to do them. And we have 2 weeks. I get that. Okay? But just make each of those steps out of love. And if you're the person being let go, okay, how do I, this is a challenging thing because it's, how do I stand up for myself?
100%. I mean, that's where the ego comes in.
Yeah, but you have to stand up for yourself.
You do. You don't want to be totally passive and like,
Yes.
I'm all love. The world can do whatever it wants to me.
Nope.
So how do I reconcile? I need to stand up for myself for what
In
I believe
love.
is right.
Stand up for yourself in love, right? So you have to make sure that when you make the statements you make, when you say the things you say, you are going to accept whatever the world gives you, right? Whatever is reflected back to you, you're going to accept. You are going to own whatever role you played in it because you played a role in it. You're going to be willing to assess internally and make the corrections you need to make, right? And then when you make the statements you make, they need to be made without anger, without a ton of emotion. They just need to be made in love, in concern and care for that organization, for the people that you had great relationships with, most likely, because most of us have great relationships. No matter where we go, we have people that we find that, hey, it was good. There's goodness there. And you're going to focus on that good, and you're going to part that way. So when you stand up for yourself, it all has to come from a place of, this is who I am. This is my worth because I'm worth being loved. This is what I think needs to happen. And I will accept whatever you decide.
Aim to love, light, truth, and goodness. And one thing that Christy in your office recently said is believe in what's possible, not probable.
There you go.
Can we end there?
Absolutely.
On the Be Well Now podcast. With Dr. Dummar, I'm Nick, the random patient who loves to ask questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone.